Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I'm a woman on a mission to help you get the Zettelkasten of your dreams on your work table beside you. Well, we are going along in a Pre-Zettelkasten series where we're just very gradually accumulating cards and information and playing with ideas and concepts that we will gradually mold into something that looks like a Zettelkasten. So you'll be able to understand where the components come from because they will arise out of the needs that we see as we work with our cards. Well, we had a lot of fun yesterday. We took the card we were working on and we brought the third element onto the card, our tagline. That tagline is super important as it brings back the whole card to our memory. And we're actually kind of neural imprinting the card with all the steps that we take to make that line. We're going to set our main cards aside now. And what we're going to focus on tonight are those cards that we were making that we tucked into a book that we were reading. And so we're going to talk tonight about, well, what do you do with these when they're done? There's a whole bunch of notes on this card. What are we going to do with this? The answer is we're going to be selective and we're going to turn some of them into cards like the ones we've been working on. And some we'll just leave behind on the card that we've left in the book and we'll file the card away. So let's take a look at how that selection process might happen and what it looks like when we extract some of these notes into main cards. So come on over to the down-facing camera and let's go through that together. Okay, here's the book and the card that I've been using. I've been jotting down the page numbers and then making notes as I went along. One of the things that I like to do when I'm reading from a book and I'm jotting down notes, I jot down whatever interests me and I don't do much of a selection process or think too hard about what to put on the page. If it caught my attention, it's reason enough to include it on my note card. But when time comes to convert it to one of the cards we've been working with, like this card where we're going to put something from the book, my reaction, and then the tagline, I'm going to want to be a lot more selective about which items really are something that I want to do all that with. And what I'm going to suggest is that you look for things that are ideas and you skip things that are facts. Look for the important parts and skip the supporting words. Definitely skip the connective tissue. We don't need that, but you wouldn't be tempted to write that down anyway. So let's see what I chose to create main cards from. Well, there's a quote from Hemingway. The writer's job is to tell the truth. And I suppose I could use that, but to me it feels like a secondhand quote. Picked up a book's quote of a quote. It almost seems to me that I would want to be closer to Hemingway before I would want to take that quote, in part because I'm familiar with it, but in part because I would want to have more of a reference for it than what I see here. So I passed on that one. The first one that I decided to go with was combining two notes as it broke across a page. The first note was test what Scott says, first imitate, then innovate. When you imitate, you've created one version, a version the way Scott says to do it. Then you test it with whatever innovation you think might be a preferable thing to do than what Scott says. And then you have tested what Scott says against your ideas. What you don't want to do is pour your ideas in and say, well, that's nice, Scott, but I'm going to do it my way. I mean, he's got a tremendous amount of experience, and so that's the way that I'm going to want to do it. So I made I'm going to combine those two and put them on one card. Now here's another quote that I almost copied down. It's from Scott. The slow way, the hard way, the deliberate way is the best way. To me, it's a nice quote, but I'm already very much involved in doing handwriting cards and things like that, so it isn't novel to me. So I passed that by. Instead, I chose this quote on page 27. Shortcuts lead to creating work you will not be proud of. So that's kind of a reminder when things get difficult. Don't take the easy way out. Continue doing the work the way you're going to be proud of the work. And he warns that there are going to be some days where you're just feeling like you're working really, really hard for so little reward, but you're going to want to press on. I turned the page to page 30 and found that at that point Scott said, just read the book straight through and don't take any notes. So I stopped taking notes. But luckily, I still have some to share with you for the card making process from a book, from a card that you would tuck into a book. Now my card's going to start out with what I got from the book, and that's going to be these two that I'm combining into one statement. It kind of broke across a page break, and that's why it went on to 2 pages. Test what Scott says, first imitate, then innovate. So I've got that much available on the card right now. And the next thing that I want to do here is to add my thoughts and my reactions to this quote from Scott. Okay, at this point, I have now added my reaction to the card. And I'm noting that the test comes about by comparing first my imitation of Scott with later my innovation from Scott. So that way I'm always doing it Scott's way first, then creating the way that I think would be best, and then I can test the two at Scott's invitation. But Scott's way comes first. All right, now I have the information that I wanted to get from the book. I have my reaction. Next, I need to add my tagline that will bring the whole card back. Okay, now I think I have a tagline that captures the whole card. Do what Scott says, then implement your innovation and test. So I've got one card. For my second card, I'm going to work on this one that's actually a direct quote. I've got quote marks around it to show that. Shortcuts lead to creating work you will not be proud of. I think that's something really important to remember, especially when the hard days come and you're working so hard and you think you're not making enough at that moment to be worth your while you're waiting for the process to mature. Okay, now my card is started off with what I wanted to remember from the book. Shortcuts lead to creating work you will not be proud of, and the person who said it. Now I'm going to add to that my reaction. Okay, here's how I responded to it. I reminded myself to think of my favorite teacher from back in my school days and see myself giving her my work and standing proudly as she looks through it. That can't happen if I take shortcuts. I want to do the kind of work I can be proud of. Do the work. Okay, now I need to create a tagline that'll bring the whole card back to me. Okay, now I've added a tagline that I believe will bring back the whole card. If you think of sharing your work, you won't take shortcuts. Now I have 2 more cards to add to my collection, but I'm feeling that I'd like to have a little bit more with this. I think I'd like to remember over time where I got these notes. So I'm going to make a little note to myself of the book that I was reading and the page number, and I'm going to add it to this card. Right now I'm just going to add it as a sticky note. You can see that's what I've got on these cards. Okay, now I won't lose track of where these quotes came from. I'm using sticky notes because we'll do a little bit more with them down the road. Okay, now we've had experiences making notes from different sources. Some we just collected in the wild as the day went on, and they were individual cards, and we just captured something, and then later added our own response in the tagline. And today we made notes in a deliberate way after taking notes on a card that we tucked into the book. Now we'll hang on to these separately, don't lose it, and we'll hang on to our notes too, so that we build up enough of a collection that we can do some more interesting things with them. But in our next video, we're just going to deal with these sticky notes so that we don't have to have those sitting around waiting to get lost. See you then. Bye-bye.